Welcome back to the program. The British government has named Oliver Dowden as Deputy Prime Minister, replacing Dominic Raab, who resigned. Dowden currently serves as Cabinet Office Minister in Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government. He was previously chairman of Mr. Sunak's Conservative Party, but resigned from that post last June after two crushing by-election defeats for the party. Meanwhile, the British opposition leader, Keir Starmer, has criticised the Prime Minister following the resignation of his deputy, Dominic Raab, over bullying complaints. The loss of the third senior minister over their personal conduct in the last 6 months will damage Mr. Sunak's efforts to revive the governing Conservative Party's fortunes, and is a major embarrassment as he had entered Downing Street in October, promising a government of integrity.
Well, the big question for the Prime Minister is why he was so weak to appoint him in the first place. The second question for the Prime Minister is why he didn't sack him. And now it's left to Dominic Raab to resign, and the Prime Minister hasn't acted. And it's that indecision, it's that weakness, I think, that goes to the heart, not just of this Prime Minister, but of 13 years now of failure. And it's why people desperately want to change. And also, there's a bigger picture here. We've got a cost of living crisis. There's a future of the NHS that is really, really important. I've been talking to students here who are the future workforce of the NHS. They desperately want to talk about the NHS, and we're mired in talking about the weaknesses and the inability of the government to actually deliver anything for the people of this country. I don't know why Dominic Raab, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, thinks that anybody wants to hear about his whining about having to resign. What I think everybody wants is strong leadership, and that has been palpably absent here. Why on earth was Raab appointed in the first place? Why on earth didn't the Prime Minister act more quickly? Why on earth isn't the government laser-focused on the cost of living crisis and the absolute mess of the NHS that they've made? The NHS is broken. Many people today would say, I'd rather hear from the government on what they're going to do about the NHS that they're broken. I'd rather hear from the government about the cost of living crisis. But here we are talking about the failures at the top of the Tory party. That's the story of the last 13 years, and you can understand why people are utterly fed up with it. I think there's a weakness from top to bottom. Strong government that delivers requires leadership, and we haven't got that. And you can ship in different prime ministers, as we've seen over the last 13 years, but there's an essential failure to deliver for the people of this country. And, where is that leadership on the cost of living crisis? People today can't pay their bills. Where's that on the future of the NHS? People can't get a doctor's appointment. The massive waiting list. Millions of people waiting more than 2 weeks to see their doctors, despite promises. They are the issues that we should be debating today, not more discussion about weaknesses and whining at the top of the Tory party.
Well, Dominic Raab resigned from the government earlier today following an independent investigation into complaints that he bullied colleagues. The months-long investigation into his behaviour heard evidence from multiple government officials about complaints of bullying at 3 different departments. Mr. Raab, who requested the investigation in November following formal complaints about his behaviour by government officials, said he felt duty-bound to accept the outcome of the inquiry, but also staunchly defended his conduct. In his resignation letter to the Prime Minister, he said setting the threshold for bullying so low set a dangerous precedent for the conduct of good government, adding that it will have a chilling effect on those driving change on behalf of the government and ultimately the British people. Let's get more perspective on this. The VOA's Henry Ridgewell joins me now from London. Hello, Henry. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello there. Good to be with you.
So let's get an update on the UK Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab's resignation, or should I say former Prime Minister.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's been quite a dramatic day in British politics in a country that's used to dramatic days. Another resignation from Rishi Sunak's cabinet, and this, I think, one of the most damaging for the government for Rishi Sunak, and not least in the manner that Dominic Raab has departed from government. As you said there, he asked for this inquiry into his behaviour, although it has to be said he only asked for that after several leaks and media revelations about his alleged behaviour. That inquiry began in November, and it reported, or a copy of the report from the solicitor, from the lawyer Adam Tolley KC, was delivered to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak yesterday. So he had several hours to mull over what to do. The country was waiting to see what he was going to do, but no decision was forthcoming yesterday. And at that point, many people assumed that Dominic Raab therefore might survive because there was no smoking gun, if you like. One assumed Rishi Sunak was sitting on the report. But then this morning, Dominic Raab announced his resignation, and he announced it with what's being seen really as a very angry letter, resentful of the process of his investigation, resentful of the interviews and the allegations and the claims of bullying that were made against him, saying that it was a flawed process, denying many of the allegations that were made, and claiming that, well, if the bar for bullying is set so low, then making good government would be impossible. And he's continued this sort of angry tirade as the day has gone on. He's done a television interview this afternoon with the BBC in which he has said that there is a group of a small minority of passive-aggressive civil servants who are effectively trying to thwart government policy. They don't like Brexit, they don't like the reform to human rights that Dominic Raab was trying to push through, and they were the ones responsible for his downfall. So a dramatic day, an angry, outgoing Deputy Prime Minister, and a lot of damage for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to try to manage.
Henry, I was going to get to that actually. Talking about Dominic Raab saying that, you know, the bar which talks about bullying was set so low, which he describes as a dangerous precedent. Do we know what these complaints against him are, as well as the other bullying accusations?
Well, there were 8 formal complaints effectively collated by Adam Tolley, the lawyer charged with investigating in this inquiry. They all related to Dominic Raab's behaviour as Justice Secretary over recent months. They ranged from alleged aggressive behaviour to bullying in meetings, to threats over people's jobs, to threats over using the civil service code. There were even allegations that he threw objects, including tomatoes, at some civil servants, although all of those claims, except 2, were dismissed in the inquiry. The 2 that were upheld and which eventually led to Mr. Raab's resignation were intimidating and aggressive behaviour, which he displayed, so Adam Tolley said, on 2 occasions in meetings and against a particular civil servant, threatening their future role. Again, Dominic Raab denied that these amounted to bullying, and said that he was simply trying to perform good governance, to try to push through reform within the civil service, to try to do what he claims the British public gave him a mandate for. And I think this is one of the most significant elements of his defence that he's laid out today, is that he's basically claiming that the civil service, those who made the bullying complaints against him, are trying to thwart the will of the British people, to put it, to sort of paraphrase his defence of his actions. His resignation letter was really so extensive and so damning of the process that it's going to be very difficult for him, I think, to try to find another role in politics, certainly for the time being, and certainly for this side of the general election, which is due by the end of next year.
Well, this is the 3rd senior, minister that's leaving the government in about 6 months over personal conduct matters. So what does this scandal mean for Rishi Sunak's government?
Well, Rishi Sunak came to power, came to the prime ministership, promising to end the sort of era of scandal and sleaze that had characterised the final days of Boris Johnson's term in office, where he had refused, for example, to fire some of his ministers, notably Priti Patel, who was accused herself of bullying as well, but he refused to fire her. Rishi Sunak came to office promising to change that culture. And as you say, he's seen 3 senior ministers depart. One, Gavin Williamson, over also alleged bullying allegations, really claims that he had insulted civil servants over a particular invite to a royal function. And then Nadeem Zahawi, who had failed to declare his own financial matters. And now I think the seniority of Dominic Raab as Deputy Prime Minister, but also as one of Rishi Sunak's closest allies, is the most damaging of all of these revelations. The claim that you heard earlier on in your clip of the opposition leader, Labour leader Keir Starmer, claiming that it shows a weakness of government because Rishi Sunak had failed to fire him. I think that is the most dangerous line for the Prime Minister. Dominic Raab resigned rather than being fired. Rishi Sunak had the chance yesterday, in the hours after receiving the inquiry report, to fire Dominic Raab, and he didn't. And indeed, in some of the statements that the Prime Minister has made today, he seems to agree with some of the complaints made by Dominic Raab that the process into the investigation was flawed. So while he has 2 jobs here. First, he has to convince the British public that he has a grip on government, that he's changed the culture that he promised to do of sleaze in the final days of Boris Johnson. Well, we'll wait to see the opinion polls on whether the British public believe he's done that, whether they approve of his approach to government. But clearly a senior resignation is always going to be damaging. But this is also a matter of party management as well. He's leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak too, and he has to keep his ministers and his backbenchers and the broader party membership across the country on board. And some of them support Dominic Raab. He was a key supporter of the Brexit campaign. He was Brexit minister for a long while. He is certainly on the right of the party and draws a lot of support with his approach. And there will be a broad swathe of the party who is sympathetic to his complaints of being treated badly in this inquiry, and complaints that he shouldn't have been forced to resign on the basis of what the inquiry has found. And yet there will be others in the Conservative Party who will be eyeing the upcoming election, eyeing the large Labour lead in the polls at the moment, and thinking we desperately need to reconnect with the centre ground in the country to try to regain some of that lost ground ahead of that election. Otherwise, my seat in Parliament might be at risk. So a difficult dilemma for Rishi Sunak, who must now try to show leadership while keeping the party together.
So let's get more on, what the British public might be thinking about this. I can understand the stir this is causing in the government circles, which is a pretty smaller circle than the wider public in Britain. So how have they received this news? What's the mood like in London where you are?
Well, you're right. I mean, this could be seen as a Westminster bubble story, although it's going to lead all the news headlines and all the national newspapers, certainly for a couple of days while the political drama unfolds. The country more widely, certainly I think there is some sort of resigned tiredness, really, at these sort of series of resignations, the inability to form a stable government. I've lost count, I have to admit, of the number of senior ministers who have resigned perhaps in the last term of government under Boris Johnson, and now, well, of course, Liz Truss briefly, and now Rishi Sunak. It used to be a rare occasion that you would report on any senior minister resigning, and now within this term of office, it must be counting on more than one hand. For people looking on, I guess they will think of the impact on policy on the one hand, while there's a cost of living crisis, while the National Health Service is in crisis, and thinking they would just wish that this government would formulate policies that would ease those daily pressures. But I think there's a wider question that people are asking as well. In 2023, what does bullying in the workplace mean? They will look at Dominic Raab's resignation letter and the defense that he's set out for his behavior, that this is simply good leadership. This is a government minister trying to push through his mandate on a civil service which he claims is somewhat resistant to the government's plans. And people will reflect themselves, well, does that count as bullying in this modern culture? And what should the consequences be for those who pursue or create that kind of culture in the workplace? So I think it's a debate which goes beyond politics. It's about the kind of society and culture and working practices that Britain and the wider world are embracing in 2023.
Henry, thank you for the update today.
Good to be with you.
Let's move on. Canadian police are investigating the theft of a cargo of gold and other valuables worth 20 million Canadian dollars that was stolen from a holding facility at the Toronto Pearson International Airport. Peel Regional Police Inspector Stephen Duvestin told a news conference that the cargo was reported missing after arriving on an aircraft early on Monday evening. He said after the aircraft landed, the cargo was unloaded and taken to a holding facility as per normal procedure, but disappeared some time afterwards. The cargo was reported missing to police a short while later.
On Monday, April 17th, 2023, an aircraft arrived here at the airport in the early evening. As per normal procedure, the aircraft was unloaded and cargo was transported from the aircraft to a holding cargo facility. Once this cargo was offloaded at a holding facility, subsequent to its arrival, this high-value container was removed by illegal means from the holding facility. This cargo was reported missing to the Peel Regional Police a short time later. An investigation has commenced. What I can say is that the container contained a high-value shipment. It did contain gold, but was not exclusive to gold and contained other items of monetary value. The total worth estimated at this time in our investigation for the property is estimated at just over $20 million.
Well, authorities in a school in the Peruvian city of Huancayo were horrified to find a man dressed as a schoolgirl hiding in a bathroom. It was unclear how the man entered the premises of the educational institution or what he was doing in one of the bathroom stalls of Rosa de America's school. When detained by the police, the 42-year-old man was still wearing the school uniform, a pink cardigan, a face mask, a backpack, a bucket hat, and 2 long fake braids. As he was being escorted out, irate parents tried to push and attack him. Local media reported that school authorities found photographs of the accused wearing uniforms from other schools in his phone. When asked by a reporter if he regretted what he had done, the man answered, "Why would I regret it if I did nothing?" The detainee was later handed over to the prosecutor's office. Residents recounted the horror of being inside their homes and riding out a deadly tornado that ripped through central Oklahoma, killing at least 3 people. Colestown resident Scott Curry said he and his wife didn't have time to shelter and had to stay inside their kitchen waiting for the tornado to pass. Curry, whose home was seriously damaged by the tornado, said he had to cling to his wife's hand as the storm was trying to make her way from him.
We knew there was a tornado that had been forming west of us. It looked like it was going to go north of us. We were starting to see some wind. We decided we were going to go ahead and try to get in the tornado shelter. By the time we got to the kitchen, the front roof of the bedroom was already ripped off. I had to hold my wife's hand, trying to keep her because it was trying to suck her out. And I was just trying to hang on for dear life. I had my arm around the door jamb into the office and had a hold of hers and was trying to pull on her, and it was trying to pull her hand out of my hand. And looked up, and it's the first time I've ever seen it looked like the inside of a tornado. It might not have been, but it was just a circulation of debris right above our heads.
And still ahead on the program, visitors from far and near flock to California to enjoy carpets of orange and yellow wildflowers. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. U.S. President Joe Biden has met with his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, in the White House. During the meeting, Mr. Biden said more could be done to deepen cooperation between the two countries and that they were working on combating drug trafficking.
Mr. President, I've long believed, as you probably know, that Colombia is the key to the hemisphere, and I mean that sincerely, the keystone. And I think we have an opportunity, if we work at it hard enough, to have a Western Hemisphere that is united, equal, democratic, and economically prosperous. Together, Colombia and the United States are leading an effort to deal with climate change, and I've been working for a long time. We're going to make a $500 million commitment to deal with preserving the Amazon. And working through the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, we're working to grow our economies from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. We're also working together to counter narcotics trafficking and address historic levels of migration in our hemisphere, especially through the Darien Gap. And Mr. President, I want to thank you for the hospitality and support Colombia continues to show to Venezuelan refugees. It's a humanitarian and generous thing for you that you're doing.
On the other hand, Colombia's president has touted the idea of swapping public debt for efforts to combat climate change in cooperation with the IMF. Mr. Petro also discussed providing financial incentives for farmers to give up coca cultivation as a means to fight drug trafficking. Colombia remains the top producer of cocaine, and its government comes under constant pressure from major allies, the United States, to reduce output. Well, Muslims around the Middle East and North Africa today mark the start of Eid al-Fitr with prayers earlier today to mark the end of Ramadan fasting. In Jerusalem, throngs of worshippers joined prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest shrine. Meanwhile, in Gaza City, thousands of worshippers flocked to the main city center, as is customary for Eid prayers, reciting rituals, scriptures, praying and greeting each other. In Libya, worshippers mainly in Benghazi and eastern areas also attended Eid prayers. Eid al-Fitr marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims fast from dawn to dusk. Meanwhile, thousands of Albanian Muslims celebrated Eid al-Fitr, the holiday marking the end of the fasting month of Ramadan, with morning mass prayers in the capital city of Tirana. Eid al-Fitr marks the start of a three-day holiday in some countries that comes after the month of Ramadan, as Muslims exchange gifts and visit family and friends. According to the latest census data from 2011, 56.7% of Albania's population adheres to Islam, making it the largest religion in the southeastern European country. In the meantime, thousands of worshippers in Qatar rushed before sunrise to the Education City Stadium to attend the Eid al-Fitr prayers. According to the community engagement and outreach coordinator for the Education City Mosque, the venue received around 15,000 worshippers.
So today was basically the first day of Eid, the first day of Shawwal. We're all excited. It's the first time ever that we're having the Eid Salah in the Education City Stadium, just a couple of months after the World Cup. So people are still, you know, reliving the memories of the World Cup and remembering that. And basically, this is a beautiful venue on campus in Education City, 12 square kilometers, you know, that's just so beautiful to not be used. And we were able to gather everybody today from families and all walks of life and all nationalities and all cultures. I came here with my son and we watched the Tunisia-Denmark game. And was it Tunisia-Denmark? Yes, Tunisia-Denmark game. And it was, you know, just a lovely setting, very accessible. The moment you enter from the gates, you already can see the stadium. So to actually see it now, instead of football players, you know, 11 versus 11, seeing maybe 15,000 people here, brothers and sisters, you know, all these families and all these people praying side by side and listening to a beautiful sermon. And it just, again, it reminds us to appreciate these special moments of being together, a human family, because Corona taught us a lesson. You know, we didn't have this. And for 3 years, literally, people couldn't even pray side by side. Even if you were going to the mosque, it was with social distancing.
And finally on the program, an unusually wet winter has led to carpets of orange and yellow wildflowers on Southern California's hillsides. Visitors from far and near took time to enjoy the bloom and stage photo opportunities among the delicate orange poppies of California's Antelope Valley. The natural blend of California weather and precipitation is a special seasoning that brings the eye-catching experience to life. Regardless, the reason for wanting to catch a glimpse of the beauty, many spectators agreed scratching this off their bucket list was time well spent.
Super bloom has, of course, been thrown around a lot this year. We're not actually experiencing a super bloom, strictly speaking. What we are experiencing this year, what is unique because of the precipitation, is the variety of flowers that we're seeing. So as serene as it looks out there, all of these flowers are battling, trying to live in this environment. They're competing with each other. We do think that the amount of rain that we saw does allow for a wider variety of flowers to be present at this moment. That is unique to this year, certainly in the time that I've seen, and it is exciting and really neat to witness. Certainly we don't see it everywhere in California, but a place like this, it's the right sort of soil with the right sort of drainage and the right sort of aspect facing the sun and the right amount of sun per year, the right amount of precipitation per year. So it's the same reason you don't necessarily see it everywhere, but here in the Poppy Reserve and surrounding areas, we do have everything mixing up to make that perfect sort of concoction in the soil to bring these flowers up.
It has been so beautiful, the yellow and orange patches, and we just first drove through like 7-8 miles, and all across it was extremely beautiful. I mean, it's really the great experience. I think this is what we are experiencing for the first time. I believe some of them maybe after many years, because we did not experience this kind of rain. So it's beautiful. I think everyone should visit at least once.
Oh, I think definitely people should be, you know, to have a chance to come over to see this magnificent view, really. And I came each year, almost each year, when the poppy blooming. So, and I stayed at a hotel here in Palmdale last night. I feel they have some kind of, the hotel completely full, so it's booked in full.
Well, that's the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers.